Hi there guys, Gary here for VFX. Welcome to another one of our little tutorials. This one today is about the principal volume, specifically because I thought it would be nice to go over something which I've done in the past. I did it a long time ago, and it's something which I found is the only way to make something that you want to look like it's underwater. You need to have a volume, because basically water is full of teeny tiny bits of grit and gravel and stuff, and they're just constantly in the water, and it's like always traveling around or being held still because the water's not really traveling, but there's indications of stuff living inside of like stuff. Water is great for keeping things in the air. Obviously air, if it's blowing in a gale in a desert, it's the same sort of thing. You need some sort of like volumetric to give that impression of like the sand and the dust. But you do the same thing for underwater. And so what I thought we'd do today is take a little scene that I've created. I'm going to open it. So I'll open it now. Let's just open it quickly now here in Blender 3.1, you notice. And this is a little submarine which I have built. And I've popped it inside of a little environment which you can see here. There's nothing much to it, to be honest with you. It's not that special. But I have got some interesting stuff in here in terms of a scene. It just looks pretty. And I've got inside of here, I've got a point light which I'm going to move out of this ship because we're going to use Eevee. This was designed originally for a cycles render. So if I go into rendering, let's just render an image of this. It'll take a little bit longer, but you can see this is cycles, just the way it works. And it's still, it's still using GPU, so it's going to be quite quick. But the shading had pointiness on that, and then there was like a random by island on the rocks. But we're just going to basically leave those as they are. But we're going to use Eevee anyway, because Eevee will give us a really quick, solid working response with volumetrics. It's fabulous in there, actually. And of course, the render times are minuscule. This is still rendering. I mean, I have got it to 4,096 samples, obviously, because default. But I'm going to stop this now, and we're going to change this over very quickly now to Eevee, and then I'll just render a frame of this. Let's change the active slot to 2. It kind of looks the same, but obviously some of the things that don't work, like pointiness and randomness, you see, we're not getting the variety of colouring here, and the rocks are kind of the same. I could go in and mess around with those, but I don't want to do that. What I want to do is just add a couple of the lights, shift a few things around, and then what we're going to do is make it look like it's underwater. So let's quickly go back to our modelling view, just because it's easier to see. And I've moved my little light here that's at the front of this sub. Change that from global to local. It's just a little bit over to the side because I had it inside lighting up the interior. So let's just move this back here and lift it up and place it just above the back of our... Yeah, let's leave it there, that's fine. So it's just above the back of there, almost like a red light that you'd have on the back of an aeroplane, or like the green red, I think it is, you have on the left and the right wing maybe. And I'm going to take this little emission shapey object here, and I'm going to do something here which I need to do, which I need to go into the material. And if we go down here, I need to just set this so the shadow mode is none. This is actually an emitting light, which in cycles works fine with volumes. It actually lights up a volume, but it doesn't in Eevee, not really. So I'm going to scale this down a little bit, make it like a smaller light. I'm going to very quickly put the cursor on that. I'm going to add a new light to the scene. I'm going to add a spotlight to the scene. So lights, spotlight, there you go, I can see it's there. I'm now going to take this spotlight, I'm going to make it part of our sub. So with my finger on shift, I'm going to drag it and drop it into the sub like this. And there, now we can now see our spot there. And if I press N, we can see it's all not rotated at all. So let's bring it round to there. Let's bring that up like that. And so it looks like it's coming out of our little spot. There we go. So if I now go back to the render view, and let's just render an image there. You see there it is. It's nice and big, that, isn't it? Let's put it down to there. So what I'm going to do is for this, just for speed, I'm going to go into the settings. I'm going to change this from 1920 1080 to 720p. 720p. So only 20p. And we'll render the image now. There we go. That was a lot quicker. It's fine. I mean, obviously it's Eevee. It's going to be quick, but that was like less than a second, which still amazes me. So let's go back to our. Let's press escape on that and move that around to here. And so we've got two lights, and we've got a light up here. which I'm going to disable that light. In fact, you know, even better, I'm just going to delete it. Let's get that gone. And let's get on with what we're doing. So I'm going to add into this scene a new mesh. I'm going to add a cube. And it's going to go to the front view here. And I'm going to position it over here. And I'm going to tab this. And let's go SX and drag it out. I'll do it again, SX and drag it out. So it's wider than our scene. And let's do the same here. Let's go SY and drag it out. SY, drag it out. SY, drag it out. There we go. And then that's quite big actually. Let's go SY and bring that in a little. There we go. And let's go SZ and scale this. SZ, scale, SZ, scale, SZ, scale, and bring that down to there. Okay. So if I go back to our camera view, you can see we're now looking at the outside of our box. If I zoom in a little bit, if I just basically go to view and just adjust the camera here, if I go in, there we go. We're now just, the camera is basically inside of the box, so we can see our environment. We can see actually our environment here. So let's go, and we're going to put a volume shader onto our box. So I'm going to go very quickly to the layout one so we can see just a little bit more. There we go. And I'm going to change this to a rendered view. And so this is obviously our Eevee very quick render. And as I say, it's not the best, but it's okay. And I'm going to assign a new shader to this. So I'm going to go and assign to this new, and it comes out with the principal BSDF. Let's go to the shading one. So let's move out of this. There we go. Stick this here. Let's do it here. It's probably easier. And I'm going to select that principal BSDF. I might as well leave it for the time being, but I'm going to add a principal volume, pop that there, and trap that into that, and then disconnect the surface. And now you'll see we've got a black mass that if I push in here, you know, you can't see nothing in there. Oh, maybe I just saw a hint of something. Oh yeah, maybe. Teeny tiny hint of something, but not very much. Part of that is because we've got nothing really lighting up that volume, at least not that we can see it. So I'm going to turn on ambient occlusion. I'm going to turn on that, and I'm going to leave the volumetrics tab open because we'll be adjusting that and put on the volumetric shadows. So what we need to do, because that is too dark for us to see what we're doing, delete that, and we're going to go to this volume, and we have the color. We have a color attribute. This is for if you want to take values from other things like the temperature and density and so on. You can see down here and adjust and basically light a volume with particle data. If you've got something like smoke or fire or whatever, particularly fire, again, that's what the black body intensity is there for, to get actual realistic fire lighting. And the same with the temperature. You can change things, make them generally stronger. But let's just do this. Let's take our density and set it to 0.2. And now, if we're in it, can we see something? Yes, we can. You can just about see. We're getting closer to our ship, and it's still quite dark in there. It's like oh, it's denser, but it's thinner when we're there. There's a little bit of light coming off from that little light there. Well, let's just make this so that's not quite so bad. I'm going to go here and go to the color, and I'm going to push that. You see if we can push that up and add a teeny tiny bit of blue to that to make that in there just to feel a little bit bluish. Let's drop the density a tiny bit more so you can see a bit more like this. That's better. And I'm going to increase and decrease. This is the anisotropy. I think that's it. Anisotropy. Anisotropy? No, anisotropy. I'm going to say, because it's just easier to say it. This is basically your backlight and your forelight. So it's the way it scatters. So back scattering and forward scattering based on your light. So what we need to do is to make those lights actually light up the scene. Is to do something quite important to them, and that is to change the intensity of light. Like it's a tiny bit of light just on that bit there. But what we need to do is change it, because 10 watts is not going to do it, but maybe 5,000 watts will do it. And now you can see the volumetric is being lit by that light. In fact, you can see it's lighting the ground, obviously, but you can see this beautiful little bit of volume just here. It's really, really lovely. And we're also going to go and find a little light on the back of our sub, which is that point light there. I'm going to very quickly call it indicator lamp red. Make it red, why not? So I'm going to click on that and then bring that and make it red. And you can see there's a red luminance just on the metal of the ship, but it's only 1 watt, which is no point. Make it 5,000 watts, and you can really see that's lighting up our scene and casting really nice, beautiful shadows. It's really nice. It's not right, because let's face it, it looks like it's foggy, doesn't look like it's underwater. There's a reason for that. We'll make some alterations to this during the course of this to make it look better. But what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to set that to 500. So it's a bit more locational. You can see the brightness of the light, but it's kind of just throwing a bit more light on there. That I don't mind so much, the actual spot here. But I would like to kind of maybe do some stuff with it just to make it feel a bit better. So I'm going to take the sides of the cone and I'm going to widen the size of the cone. Want a deeper spread on that, really. So it's lighting up where you're going. That's better. That's definitely better. And let's increase the blend a little bit. Yeah, or we can filter it all the way down. But what I'm going to do is the radius of the light. Because the intensity is so bright, the radius of the light, you can diminish that at its core by increasing the radius. If you increase the radius, you basically get a much more diffuse light feel here. You don't get it quite so bright around that light tip, which always helps us, especially when we've got an object which is coming out of a minuscule point, which essentially is the light is, but it's got to look like it's coming from a broader point. But what I'm going to do here is I actually want that to be quite hot at the end, so bringing this down makes it hotter at this point. You might also notice that we've got some bricking here, if you can see, like pixelation, basically. If I just, let's just very quickly render an image there. Let's go to this rendering tab. If I press 1 here, just to make it a bit bigger. So you can see, this is nice, this is got lovely, but because of the intensity and the actual directionability of this spotlight, it kind of feels rough as dogs. So what we need to do is make some adjustments here, increasing the sample slightly and increasing the tile size, because the tile size there is 8 pixels, and that's kind of, if I change this to 2 pixels and increase the samples to 128, I'm going to change it from slot 2 to slot 3, and let's render the image again, and you'll see what I mean. Basically, that will make it a lot smoother across here, if you can see, a lot smoother. If I just toggle between the two, slot 2, slot 3, slot 2, slot 3, it's a lot cleaner. You can also notice that actually it's a little bit cleaner here as well, but here in particular, loads better. But it's a nice white light. I think, do I leave it white? A little part of me wants me to change the color of it slightly, make it feel a bit more like it's not looking at air. I'm going to adjust the light color ever so slightly, not too much. I don't want to muck around with the color of the light too much, but I think I'm going to make it a little bit yellow, and then that will sit in better with the red. And then what I'm going to do, yeah, that's kind of, it's got that warm, but a kind of a dusty kind of feel actually again. Do we do the dusty? Let's go with the dusty, because I'm going to do some stuff to make this feel more like underwater as we go on. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back here to the world, and the world has a color to it, you can see. I'm going to make it pale blue and then render this again. It's not going to be correct, but I want you to see that the lighting in that basically has an environmental effect on this as well. It makes it feel like the whole scene has some sense of in liquid, but we don't want it that bright, but we do want it to, because we're going to make it darker, what we need to do, I'll leave the strength as it was at 1. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make this darker, but in order to counterbalance that so we don't lose too much color, I'm going to increase the saturation. So it pushes it further that way. And then if I render the image now, it'll go more of a darker green somewhere. It is a bit, maybe it's a little bit too dark. If I just push it up a little bit, and let's try that again, rendering the image. There, that's fine. So we've got a feel of like there's some lighting in there, and then this is really picking it up. But there's some general light in there. That red light actually is quite punchy actually quite now. But we're not getting much of the detail of the ship. So potentially we could put another light in there if we wanted to, just out of view maybe, just to like throw some light in as if some other lights coming from somewhere else, just to give it a bit of extra detail and stuff. But to be honest with you, I actually quite like it in this instance. I'm going to leave it as it is. And the rocks, I think they might need a little bit of shading changing, just a teeny tiny bit. So I'm going to do that now. Now, this was obviously designed to work in cycles, as I said, so I'm going to very quickly just delete that and delete that color ramp as well. Go away. There we go. And I'm going to take this and I'm going to add, this is, I'm just going to cheat for the sake of argument. So we're going to go into texture and we're going to create, not going to create, and then we're going to create a Musgrave. And I'm going to put that right into there, so we get sort of, we will get some, there you go, some differences like that. I'm going to scale this the other way, so it's smaller values. I'm going to rack up the detail still. I'm going to reduce the dimension somewhat. And there we go. So it feels a bit more rocky. A bit more rocky. And then I'm going to add into that a converter of a color ramp. Drop that in there. So we get the same sort of feel still. There you go. And then I'm going to bring this white. And I'm going to just bring this and make it darker. There we go. As for the sand, I don't mind the sand. I think maybe if we make it a little bit smaller and bring down the detail a little bit and reduce the dimension again. Too small. Yep, and then let's just bring down the height just a teeny tiny bit. There you go. So that feels a bit more. It just feels a bit more, really. I mean, and a bit more is just great. I love it a bit more. So that's nice. And then if we are to render a frame of that, we'll obviously get what we're seeing there, right there. So let's have a quick render an image. Go to the render view. There we go. So again, that has a nice feel, a nice underwater feel. So I'm going to very quickly save this as, and let's call it sub scene 001. So we've got that. But what I need to add to it to make it feel even more as if it's inside of water is that whole thing about things being suspended in the water. Little bits of particles, little bits of So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new, I'm going to create, let's go back to the layout view because I can see what I'm doing. Ooh, that's quite sassy. I like that. So here we are, we've got our environment, this lovely sort of like slightly foggy feel to everything. And I am going to add into this scene, I'm going to add a Eevee sphere like this. I'm going to set the segments to 8 and the rings to 4, and that way we get a kind of a little tiny ball. Let's go to edit and let's make it a proper little tiny ball. Go scale and pull it down and make it squitty. That is a technical term. It means it's like a squid. Don't ask. And I'm going to move this. Let's move this directly into the beam because actually I need to be able to see what this is like in the light, because that's really going to be the kicker, as it were. There we go. That's in the light beam. And let's go to shading. And I'm just going to pop out of this and then go that to pick up on that. And let's first things first. Let's make the object smooth. There you go. Smooth shade. There we go. And let's add a material to this. And I am going to make it high specular, medium roughness, maybe a hint of metal just to give it a bit more sort of like a bit of shing. And then I don't worry about the clear coat or anything like that. And I think I might just go with a slightly greeny colour. Yeah, let's bring it down a tad. There we go. Right, so it's I can see it there. Can I see it there? Let's have a look. I can kind of see it there as well, but that's fine. So what we need to do is, and this is something which you can do. There's a thing. I found a problem with cycles, at least I think I have, is that if you put an object that you want to be a particle emitter inside of a volume, when you render it, it renders the shape, even when you turn it off. So I think that is potentially a bug, if anyone's listening of any import. But if it's not, then it's me. That's fine. I take it completely on the chin. But what I have found is that if you have got an object which you're using as a volume and you want to fill it with grit, you can make that the particle emitter. So let's just do that. Let's just do it that way. It's quicker, it's easier. So let's go here and let's go well, we can do this. We can go add modifier, we can go particle system, or we can just go to the particle system and go plop, plop, for as long as the particle system is still the particle system like this, because at some point it's going to become part of the geometry nodes, or particle nodes as it probably will be, because and we're going to have the emitter. I'm going to set it to emit 9,000 on the first frame, and I'm going to change it so the source is in fact the volume, but that doesn't work until you hit use modifier stack, and then you basically go back to the first frame. So if we go like this and then go there and then go plop, is it doing it? It's doing it, but it's not making it. Come here, you're making a mess. Right, so yeah, had a little bit of a problem there. For some reason, the actual cube that I had refused to put them in a volume, so I deleted it, put in a new one. Absolutely fine. So let's get back to where we were, shall we? I'm just going to go back here to my view, and I'm going to disconnect my camera so I can zoom in and out of this a bit more in the shaded mode. And you can see here we've got a bunch of particles. Which are filling the space. You can see they're all over the space, not just on the walls. And they're very teeny tiny. And look at that, they're on the walls again. Are they, or are they everywhere? I thought they were everywhere. Let's just go back to this new cube and look at those particles and volume, and I'm going to click on use the modifier stack. That's it. I knew there was something. So that basically means that they will appear in the volume area, and if I just drag up here, and let's stick in here, let's stick a timeline. So if I drag, you can see they're falling out of the shot. So we need to stop that from happening. So we're going to go to our physics section here, and you can see we've got Newtonian and mass and everything. Now what I could do is just set that to none. But if I want to move these around with anything like a turbulence field or anything, I can't do that anymore because I need to have some level of physics on them. So I'm going to put that onto Newtonian. And I go down here to my field weights. And then here you can see gravity is set to 1. So I'm going to set that to 0, which means that now they will stay where they are. But you'll also notice that they have a velocity. They are shifting around in space. That's because just standard. If you look in here, they have a velocity. So we need to stop that straight away. So the normal, that back to 0, and now, nope, they are, no, they're not moving. It's all in my imagination, thankfully. So they're there, and also their lifespan needs to be changed because they're dying off after 50 frames. So let's set them to 250 anyway. So they're now there, and they're not moving, and they are in a fixed place. And we can actually see, if I zoom in here, you can see they are definitely in the depth. And you might also notice that if we look here a little bit closer to one or two of them, let's just get close to one. It is in fact a sphere. And the reason for that is because we are using a sphere, a particle sphere, it is called. Because obviously it's a particle, it's a replacement for the particles, it's just an object. And what I'm going to do is I am going to reduce its quality somewhat. They're not taking a long time to render, but they are still a little bit laggy. Let's go back to here. And if I just disassociate myself from them, you can see that they're also very, 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 very white and very, very shiny. But is that me, or is that the halo of the sphere? So let's just be certain. Let's go back to our new cube. Let's go down here to the render section, object, and it's sphere 1. That's why it's the wrong object. We want that to be a particle sphere. And now you will see, if I click onto this spot, you can barely see them. They're barely there. Now I'm going to put more in there, but let's do it. Let's be gentle with this. Let's change this resolution here first of all to HDTV 1080p, which is standard HD, and leave that at 100%. And I will go in very, very quickly. I'm going to go back to my new cube, which essentially, let's call it something sensible. Let's call it volume cube. And I am going to go to the particle section, and I'm going to increase the number of particles to 27,000. And now we should actually see them a bit more, because you do need to see them, because if you can't really see them, then you're not really getting the full, effect. So let's, should we render a frame, see what happens? Let's just press F12. No, there we go, I didn't think so. So you can now see there's little bits and dots and stuff hanging around. Now, they've got no lighting on them at all. So let's go back to this particle sphere, and let's increase the metallic, increase the specular, reduce the roughness. Come on. And let's make that a little bit brighter. There we go. And let's just desaturate them a little bit. Yeah, that looks all right. So we can now see there's definitely something in there, definitely something in that general thing. And we're going to do a little rendering test again. Let's go F12. Is it done it? Won't be long. There you go. So that's it. There definitely are more dots and spots in there now, and that's a lot better. We're much improved. So what I'm going to quickly do, because we've got some nice little extra little bits of lighting going on in there, I am going to add a green light just under here, just to add a little bit more light underneath. So I'm going to go to layout here, because I don't really want to be faffing around. You can see all the little dots and stuff in here. I'm going to pick this light. Let's just go Z6, and so I can see where this one is. I'm going to move that teeny tiny bit that way, teeny bit, and I'm going to go Shift D. So we get that, press escape, so it just resets. I'm going to push it down. And we're in local translation mode, not global. We're in local up here, you can see that. So I'm going to bring that up to there. That's its radius. Let's go back into the shading. And you can see there it is. Let's just get rid of that. There we go. That's better. And I am going to change that from, let's just call that green. Okay, it should shift it. There it is. And we'll go into that, and let's change this to a green. There we go. Very nice little running lighty kind of thing. Now, what we are going to do very quickly as well, let's go back into our fog. And I'm not sure I didn't go into this as well as I could have been. The anisotropy, if I bring this back down towards -1, what that does, that essentially back scatters all the light, so it pushes it backwards. If I bring it to the middle where it's 0, there's basically no change to the way the light's been scattered, it's just standard. And as I push this forwards, you'll notice it kind of pushes itself more forwards. It's almost like it's lighting up the front of the fog, which is exactly basically what it's doing. If I put it to 1, it kind of is a similar sort of thing to it being at -1, which is it's kind of, but it's just a nice little tight light at the front. So if I bring that down to 0.9, you get a bit of a, you're starting to get sort of a level of thickness in relation to the density without losing the density that you've got up here. Let's make it 0.95. There we go. What I'm going to do as well is very quickly, one of the big problems we have here is this is basically the purest, greenest light you've ever seen. So I'm going to go here, I think, and we can do it here actually, and I'm just going to desaturate the light a bit. It's not taking it, is it? Let's just do it here. Right. Just going to desaturate the light a bit. So let's bring down the green. There you can see, maybe not quite that much. Okay, the same there. And let's do the red. Pardon me, and do the same again. So as we take out just a teeny tiny bit of that red, if I go 0.9, it's gone very white at the core. Now I don't want it to go that white at the core. That's because the moment you kick out 100% saturation, you start to get kind of a realistic, bit more realistic light model. So let's set that to 0.95. Oh, I'm gonna get 0.9. Nope, get the numbers right way around. 0.97. There we go. So what we have now is something that just feels a little bit more accurate, pretty much. Okay, so if I now render a frame of this, let's hit the render button, F12. There we go. And that is not finished. It's finished in terms of that level of render, but what we need to do now is we need to do a bit of work in compositing, and this is where it takes it from being pretty to being particularly good. So let's do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to the Compositing tab, and I'm going to change this around because I don't think this is conducive to a proper layout. It's not what you need. You need this to be an image editor, and this can stay as it is. I'm going to click on the Use Nodes at the top, so we get the render layers up like this, and I am going to add a viewing node. Now I'm going to press, there we go. Shift gives you a little nodule, which you can only move really properly by pressing G. Now, I'm going to do stuff between here and the composite node, but I want to be able to see what's going on without it being behind this, because when I create a viewer node, and you'll see what I mean. Let's get an output. Let's create a viewer node. Let's pop this into here. You get it all here, but it's all underneath everything, which is nice, I suppose, but it's better when you can actually see a better job of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the viewer node here. Let's go to the actual view on here for the backdrop, and I can just turn it off. It's that simple. Doesn't have to be in there, but we do see it here, which means that any alterations we make in here, in the composite node, will appear in the viewer down below. So the first thing we're going to do, what we're going to do is we're going to give it a little bit more noise. We're going to give it a little bit of a color correct, because it's not quite green enough, and a little bit of lens distortion, so we get it to feel more like it's in liquid. So the first thing we need to do is generate a little bit of noise. So what I want to do is I want to create something where I can have another color version of this, like a slightly different colored version of this, and then something that will allow me to fracture it in a noisy kind of way. Well, there's the thing. You said it straight away, noisy kind of way. I'm going to go up here, and I'm going to go add a input, and it's going to be a texture. Drop it there, and at the moment it's a non-specific. I am not a texture. It has nothing. If I click in there, there are no textures. So I need to create one. So go over here to the texture tab, click on this, go new. Doesn't matter about the word brush. Don't worry about that at all. Pay no attention to that. And it says image or movie, and you click on that, and you've got all sorts of lovely things. They're all great, actually, in all honesty. I'm going to pick up noise. You can see that's exactly what that is. And I go here, I'm going to be able to pick texture, and that's it, it's noise. I've just got black, sorry, I've got white values. You can't really see it very well. White values against black, or in this case, alpha. So what I need to do is use this. I need to add a way of mixing it together. I'm going to add an alpha over, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the color of that, plug it into that, and then going to add into this a converter. We're in there actually a color, changer, an Rgb Curves. I'll drop that here, and I'm going to put the value, so the image of this into the Rgb. Oh yeah, beggar. I'm going to put this. I'm going to take the image of this, I'm going to stick it into the image there, and the image out into there, and then that can go into there. So at the moment that changes nothing. I'm just going to darken this down, just to show you what I'm trying to do. I want this to go into there. There we go. So I'm taking the value, which of course is doing nothing because I've muted it, and I'm putting it into the alpha over. And what that's doing is that is saying, right, based upon this texture, I'm going to display either the original render or the color corrected version. So if I shift this up and let go, you can see it's far too bright. I can lift it up a little bit, and it gives you a little bit of noise. So that's kind of like, that's me using a lighter version of the image combined over the top of the original image, but using a noise pattern to do that. So this is, it's just a really sweet way of adding a little bit of noise into our render. Even though we've rendered it clean, it'll just do a little bit of like mucking around with it, and it makes it feel a bit more like it's photographed, I suppose is the best way to put it. So let's just move these over here. I need to leave those as they are. And I am going to move this over here, just trying to tidy it up, give me a bit of room, because that's one thing what I've done there, that's fine, but I now need to do another color correct. Now, if you go into color here, you've got color balance, color correction, exposure, and so on, and you can use all of these, and hue saturation value. But my favorite, one of my favorites, because actually I also love tone mapping, but my favorite node is really as the Rgb Curves, because you get complete control over the individual colors, red, green and blue, and you can also do global pushes. So I can take this and I'll add what is often used for a basic grade, which is an S-curve. And an S-curve basically you make the light areas lighter and the dark areas darker. So that's a bit too extreme maybe, but you kind of get the picture. So if I just whoops, reset the curve, you can see it just puts it back to where it was. So what I'm going to do is I am going to lift it a little bit there. I'm going to bring it down a little bit there. Just a teeny, that's too much. There we go. Just to make the lighter bits a little bit lighter and the darker bits a little bit darker. But what I also want to do is I want to try and spit out some of this red. Now, in order to get white and black, you always need to make sure that your red value at 1 is 1, the red value at 0 is 0, same with your green, same with your blue. So it's better to mess around inside. So for example, I want this to stay a hot point. If I bring this down, it'll lose its intensity, but it won't change anything here. It just messes with all the red, so I can take all the red out, for example. You see, so that's like, ooh, fully underwater, but you've lost all that red. So I don't want to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this down in the middle. So we are reducing the amount of red. So if I just, let me just press M on this, you can see I've taken the red out of here, but not all of it. I want a little bit of sandy color there. So you can see I'm just pressing M, by the way. It literally mutes the node. I'm going to go into the blue as well. And I'm going to bring the blue down a touch. And I'll take the green, I'm going to lift that up a touch. Helps if you press mute, unmute it. Hey, ooh, that was silly of me. I'll bring that blue up a little bit more. There we go. So we're just going from the very, very strong colourfuls of that and muting them somewhat, but we're still getting the red. And that's kind of what I wanted that, because that's a really nice bright poppy thing to see. It's quite lovely. Quite lovely. So that's kind of made it a little bit more realistic. What we can do as well, if you really want to be even more accurate, is to go into the color again, get the hue saturation value, drop that into there. Let's just move that a bit further across there. There we go. And we're not meddling with the hue, we're not meddling with the value. This is with the saturation, and I'm going to set it just to 0.9. And what it tends to do, you can see what it's done there. It's just really gone right. That is a white core. If I push it up, you see, it just goes nasty red. It's actually not nasty red, it's just values, higher values of red higher than 1. So let's put that back again. So that was 1.95 maybe. There you go. That's nice. So it's just desatting it ever so slightly, and let's just press M on that. You can see a little bit of desat. Maybe that's a little bit too much. Maybe 0.987. Yeah, okay, yeah, I'm happy with that. So it's just not much, but it just takes a little bit out. Just desaturates it slightly, and that's always a good thing. Now, the best thing, of course, that we can do here right now is make it feel like we're looking at it still, like through like a glass or something like that, just something like the bottle of a Coke bottle. That's kind of that's the thing I always think of, because you always get that kind of like bit of distortion. What we really want is to add into this something that gives it a bit more quality, a bit more chromatic aberration in the corners. So like that whole thing about looking through glass lens. So I'm going to add in here, I'm going to go to distort. I'm going to put on a lens distort like this. I'm going to pop that on there. So the image has gone in, and at the moment it's doing nothing. So that that distortion amount, this is what we want to do. But we don't want to go to a plus number. I'm going to go to a minus number, a minus 0.505. Now, if I just turn this on and off, you can see what I'm doing is I'm actually pulling out the edges rather than pushing in the edges. So it's kind of like stretching it in a curve that way, out of our bounds, rather than stretching on the inside. I prefer that, particularly with something like this, because if you were to turn the camera, you would see a little bit like a bit of extra sort of like bloat in the corners. So it's a pinchy bloat, if you know what I mean. And that looks really nice. So I'm going to go here to dispersion, and I'm going to put this on 0.1. And you can see immediately with the chromatic aberration that it enables, that really pushes that I am looking at something that's underwater. It just really, any chromatic aberration will always make things look better. But in this instance, it's like I am looking through water, and that immediately makes it feel more realistic, more watery. I like that. So if I put it at 0.2, look at all of it now. It took a bit longer, of course, but that's really quite heavy. But but even I think 0.1 is too big for this. I'm going to 0.05. So it's just some in the corners, and I think that's really nice. Basically, I'm also going to do one final thing, and this is just a little extra, sort of like. And the major reason why I'm doing this extra is because the particles are if you are moving around inside of this scene, the particles can be quite big and full in camera and look a little bit odd. So let's go back to our scene. Let's go back to the shading so we can see this here. Because you won't see what we've just done in comp here, you'll just see what we're going to do after in comp when you do the final render. So if I go back here and let's pick my volume cube. Let's go back to the particles, and I think that's a fair number. Yeah, that's a fair number. But as I say, you've got some biggies in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my camera, which is over. Oh, there you go. Wrong collection. There we go. There's my camera. I'm going to enable the depth of field like this. I'm going to make sure I think it's set up in here. It is. Yes, that's fine. Let's go back to here. And I've got a small scene, so I'm going to have to make this a small value. There you go, look at that, 0.2. Let's pick our sub. So the sub is in focus, and now you can see here this sort of like the corner of this rock here is out of focus. And as you look, these here, you can see the balls themselves are also, if I turn it on and off, they're going soft, and that really makes a hell of a difference. I think maybe the f-stop is a little bit too small, 0.4. Yeah. I can live with that. That's nice. Maybe let's see what one does. Yeah, you see they're starting to soften. There's some big ones there. So let's make that 0.5 just to be on the safe side. Yep, I like that. But we're still getting a little bit of stuff going on here. So if we go back to the render view here, I'm going to change that from slot 3 to slot 4. I'm going to press F12, which will render the image, and then it'll run the comping stuff. And you watch what happens. So wait for it. It'll happen in a window. There you go. And that's done it. There you go. So there you go, it's rendered and it's comped, and then you do get a really true, lovely underwater feel. Listen, guys, I hope that's been some use to you. I really like using volumes. In other software I've used in the past, they've not been as quick as this, they're not as slick as this, they're not as good as this. So thank you so much. Please like and subscribe, it helps me so much, and it will mean that it'll make it easier for me to carry on doing these, which is wonderful. Yeah, just keep up the good work. Keep using Blender, keep learning more, keep getting stuff done. Send me some images. I've realised I've not asked ever. Send me some of your stuff. I want to see it. If you've done anything that's been... one chap actually did that. He actually he followed the flag tutorial, and instead of doing 1, he did 3. And I was so impressed. And fair play him. It was brilliant. Listen, guys, just take care, look after yourselves, and I'll see you all soon. Bye.